Okay, in a minute we're going to talk about the second binge of The Expanse. This will be from episode 6 through 10 after this. Hello out there, I'm the oldest nerd, and we have a lot happening in especially episode 6. It seemed that the good dividing point was at the end of 5, where they're building up all of the elements in order to bring it all together for the second half. I knew this was going to happen, but it didn't happen in the way that I expected. And in that, I believe that gives a lot of credit to the writers who are not taking this in a direction that you would expect. We have a certain parallel between Murtry and Amos, for instance, and a couple of romantic interests between characters here and there, which come and go for different reasons. We have an unexpected way that it all resolved itself on the planet. Miller was gone altogether, but he does show back up at the end of episode 6 and is telling Holden that he is independent. He is still himself, but his alter ego as the investigator was under control by the protomolecule. This clarification of exactly what Miller was and what he's trying to do, he's able to pull himself apart with Holden's help of being part of the protomolecule and now knows the way to destroy it. Now, in the meantime, in episode 6, there was a lot of this going on where after this nuclear blast, it caused the reactors not to be able to fuse with the various ships that were in orbit. And that meant that they had only battery power to run their thrusters and knew that they only had a certain amount of time before one after the other would fall out of orbit and burn up. This would not be good. Also, the earthquakes that were caused by the nuclear blast that happened also turned into a tsunami. They had to find shelter, could not get back to their ships. A shuttle that was sent down to start ferrying people up burned up in the atmosphere on the way in. They didn't risk bringing another. How are they going to deal with this? Holden gets the idea, having gone to the ruins earlier, that there is a way in. And they blow a hole in and they hold up there until the water recedes. And nobody knows exactly how long it's going to take. They don't know how long they've got to keep the ships in orbit. They don't know what is the cause of this disease that everyone is starting to get, where green organisms grow in their eyes until they're blind. All of this add to the tension between Murtry and Holden, and especially between Murtry and Amos. And you have a very compelling story. Now, we talked about in the last video about this that there were 3 stories that were rolling along. Actually, there are 4. The 4th one is about the OPA trying to deal with a revolutionary who's trying to stir up some kind of trouble, although we don't know exactly what. We do know that he is causing some trouble. He was caught by members of the OPA at one point, but manages to talk himself out of being spaced, as they say, which is basically put him in an airlock and open the outer door. They didn't do it. They saved the guy, and we're just going to take him into custody, and he gets away. So there is the aftermath of that, everything that's happening. There's a loss of communications with Illis that causes Christiane to fall in the polls against her opponent, and there is so everything is jumbled. And of course, Bobby is working with these people who are basically taking stolen garbage and selling them to others in order to make a reasonable profit off of it. And it comes to where they have the great big job, which somehow looks too easy to Bobby, and her cohorts just think that she's being a worrywart and don't much care for her anyway and try to push her out of the way. How that solved comes in a different way. It starts, in fact, a whole idea of what's going to happen in season 5. and rather than tie into the rest of the story at all it is just the seeds laid for season 5. Not something I was expecting. Kind of an interesting way to do that. So in eliminating that story arc then in ours, what we're left with is the political future of Christian and what will become of the Rocinante crew and the Belters that are on the planet. There doesn't look like there's a way that this could be resolved in a logical manner. That is to say that we know that the heroes have to get away, or at least most of them do, in order to be able to come back for another season. So you don't have to worry about Jim Holden and most of the crew of the Rocinante. They're going to have to come back. So there's not really that much tension there. You have to focus it on the other characters. And what's going to happen to Murtry, and is he and Amos going to get into that fight that Amos was promising? This is all resolved by the end of this season, and I rather like the way that they did. It was a matter of them wanting to have it out, and there was that satisfaction in the very last part of the last episode. Political situation did not end as we expected. We figured that there was going to be all kinds of ups and downs and cheating by both sides and a very narrow win for one or the other, and it was, but the winner wasn't who we expected, and the relief that Christian showed after being defeated was better than we expected, although we have some suspicion here that it's had a toll on her marriage, and that may be something that goes into the next season as well. What's going to become of her marriage, and what is she going to be doing with Bobby, who has offered to team up with her as they both need something to do now. I suspect that even though she will not be the Secretary General of the UN in the next season, she will have a role to play in one thing or other. The resolution of this does not close out these planets for colonization now. We now have a very open field, and the show can go just about anywhere from here, but this gives a lot of room for further exploration, further trouble, and trouble is brewing, and a way for Holden and the Rocinante crew to get back into the thick of it. So, otherwise a very satisfying program, a very satisfying season, especially if you like things that don't end the way you expect, that do leave some loose ends, and there are some loose ends, and it looks like that's going to lead into the next season. So I'd like to know what you think about it, and while you're thinking about it and putting it down in the comments, why not subscribe? It's a need to keep subscribers coming in order to keep the channel like this growing, so I hope that you will go down and subscribe. It doesn't cost anything. It doesn't require you to wear funny hats or go to meetings. It just shows that you want to see more of what we do here, and I hope that you do. So until then, and very soon, we're going to be talking about the new Star Wars movie. We're due to see that the day after this tapes, and we're also going to start on Lost in Space. So if you're interested in either of those, stay with us. We also will be downloading a new issue of the Picard comic and talk about that as well. So there's much coming up, so why not stick around and make sure you know when our next video comes away. You can do that by ringing the bell. And until then, don't go far.